yoga. This is a really interesting class that's guaranteed to generate a ton of questions, but that's okay. Interesting quote: "Those who sincerely long for a mystical, direct experience must unquestionably begin with the dream yoga discipline." Now, when we look at today's class for dream yoga, we're going to see just exactly what happens when we go to sleep, where do we go when we dream, and what happens with the process of dreaming. One of the most important tools for any student on the esoteric path is a mystical direct experience, to be able to confirm firsthand for yourself some of the things that we're talking about. Most people's first successes with things like astral projection or contacting non-human intelligences and that kind of stuff usually comes via the practice of dream yoga. Now, when we look at the term yoga, most people think of that as a form of exercise, especially now with what is happening with yoga. But we have to remember that when we look at the origin of yoga, yoga literally means union with God. Okay, so it wasn't specifically meant for a form of exercise. So when we talk about dream yoga, we're talking about uniting with a higher purpose through our dreams. Okay, so the practice of dream yoga allows us to experience firsthand, directly for ourselves, some of the things that we've been talking about, like other dimensions and different states of consciousness and communication with other intelligences and that kind of thing. And that's why Master Samael here is talking about anybody that really wants to start getting involved with this stuff, this is where you start. This is why today's class is usually really exciting, because for me as well, the first experiences I had came out of the techniques in this class. And for a lot of students that I've talked to, and a lot of people on this path, this class and some of the techniques we'll look at today usually generates a lot of really positive experience that allow us to grow and develop spiritually. Dream yoga is simply the discipline of being conscious while the physical body sleeps. Okay, the discipline of being conscious while the physical body sleeps, also known as lucid dreaming. Right? This is really what we're going to talk about today, talk about lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is a term that was popularized fairly recently, but the concept of dream yoga has been around in various forms in all kinds of different esoteric disciplines for a very long time. It's simply being aware that we're asleep and being aware that we're no longer in the physical body and that we're no longer on the physical plane. We're in another form of a body and we're somewhere else other than the physical world, which is what lucid dreaming is all about. Being aware of the dream process, being aware of not being in the physical body, and being aware that we're in a different state of consciousness, a different state of awareness in a different place. The purpose of dream yoga is to control, remember, and understand the experiences that happen while we sleep. And we're going to look at techniques for all these things today. We'll look at how to improve our dream memory and remember more of our dreams. We'll look at understanding what's actually happening when we're dreaming, and we'll look at how to control the state of lucid dreaming, or the state of consciousness that we have while we're actually asleep. So let's just back up a few steps and say, what is it that happens when we go to sleep every night? What is the process of sleep? When we fall asleep, this is something that happens automatically every night. The astral body separates from the physical body. There's an unfoldment that occurs, and that's automatic. It's just part of nature. It's part of the process of sleep. We don't have to actually astrally project or anything else like that because we're already there. That's one of the things that makes dream yoga and lucid dreaming fairly simple to do. That's one of the things, or one of the reasons why most people usually have experiences that start from a lucid dream state. Because you're already in the astral. You just have to realize that you're there. Unlike trying to meditate to astrally project from a state like right now, where you have to put your body into relaxation, control your thoughts, and then put yourself in the astral, with lucid dreaming you're already there. Part of the process of sleep is an unfoldment of the astral body from the physical body. Now, one of the things that happens is the ego travels out of the physical body and uses the astral body as its vehicle in the astral dimension. Okay, we can think of the different bodies that we have as vehicles for the different dimensions. Just like if you want to go on the road, you need a car. If you want to go off-road, you need a 4x4. If you want to go in the water, you need a boat. You want to go in the air, you need an airplane. Each different dimension that we exist in requires the use of a different body. Now, in many aspects, just like the ego uses the physical body as its vehicle, the ego unfortunately also uses the astral body as its vehicle. Okay, so when we go to sleep and we unfold into the astral with our astral body, The downside of that whole process is the ego still remains in control. The ego still has the steering wheel of the new vehicle. In the astral, consequently, the ego still has our consciousness trapped asleep. The interesting thing that happens in the astral is the astral isn't like the physical. The astral conforms to our thoughts. So during the day, we're still in the physical world, but in our mind, we're daydreaming, we're thinking about the past, we're planning the future, we're living in that constant state of daydreaming. The interesting thing that happens in the astral, everything that we think about, everything that we fantasize and all that kind of stuff becomes the reality that we see before us. Okay? In the astral, the ego still has our consciousness trapped asleep. It's just a different state, but the consciousness is still at an unawakened point. It's still trapped and controlled by the ego. As a result, the ego takes its thoughts, desires, etc., with it into the astral world. That's why we've all experienced this. You've had something on your mind or an event that happened during the day that you inevitably end up dreaming about at night. A lot of the same thoughts, the fears, the wants, the desires that we carry during the day can manifest in the astral at night as our dreams. Okay, because those thoughts, those wants, those desires, those fears, they're all the same egos. So we carry those egos within. Remember, the consciousness is trapped, bottled within those egos. So it's not unusual for us to dream about the things that we do during the day as well. So when we fall asleep, that's what happens. Why does that happen? Well, that's one of the things that allows the physical body to repair itself. So our consciousness, it's literally like driving a car into a garage. It's like parking the car in the garage for the night, taking another vehicle out for a spin. Every time we fall asleep, we park the physical body in the garage, more or less. Now that consciousness and ego transfers into the astral body. That process is something that helps to allow the physical body to rest and repair itself. We're literally, taking the car into the garage, getting a tune-up and an oil change and whatever every night while we go wandering around somewhere else. Let's have a look at what dreams are then. Dreams are nothing more than the experiences that we have in the astral world. So everybody's always talking about astral projection, and the interesting question is, if you ask people, have you astral projected? Every human being has to say yes. We do it every single night. That's why astral projection is a really safe, natural process. It's something that we do every single night. Every time you fall asleep, there's a shift in consciousness. There's an unfoldment from the physical body into the astral body. So when you fall asleep, you shift into your astral body, and you're wandering around the astral world doing things, experiencing things. Those things that you do and experience in the astral, they become the dreams that you remember when you wake up. So dreams are nothing more than experiences that we have in the astral world. Just like when we daydream during the day, the egos continue, and I put it in quotation marks because it's not really daydreaming anymore, they continue that process at night in the astral world. So the wants, the desires, the thoughts, the fantasies, the things, memories from the past, the worries and plans for the future, just like all that stuff is racing through our head during the day, it keeps racing through our head during the night, but becoming the reality there. You can think of dreams as almost like an embodiment or a personification of the multitude of thoughts that we have during the day. Remember that we have 30 to 40,000 thoughts a day. Well, those things become the real experiences that we have at night. It's no wonder that our dreams are random and bizarre and non sequitur and haphazard and that kind of stuff, because they're simply just the egos continuing that existence at night while we're sleeping. When we wake up, we remember parts, or sometimes little bits and pieces, or sometimes the entire experiences that we had. That's what becomes dreams for us. And sometimes we remember a lot of our dreams, sometimes we don't remember any of our dreams, depending on who you are. Sometimes there are people that will remember all kinds of dreams on a regular basis. I've talked to people that can recall 1 or 2 dreams a year. Well, look at how we can change that today as well. Yes?
Do you think that sometimes when we don't remember all of the dreams, it's because it's kind of a solid of the subconscious, kind of like Freudian? And when you do remember everything that happened, it's because it's a memory from the future, from the past?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. We'll look at some techniques that allow you to remember almost everything that you dream on a regular basis. It doesn't. Sometimes the things that we dream about can have all kinds of symbols and that kind of stuff. Sometimes we can have experiences during the dreams that there's very specific reasons why we can't remember them, almost like there's bits that are hidden from us that we have to uncover. Yeah.
But when you feel them with like all your six senses, not just the five, and they often happen in the future, or sometimes you feel like they happen.
Oh, yeah, it's quite possible to, from the vantage point of the astral, it's quite possible, because remember that things happen in the higher dimensions and crystallize down. It's quite possible, and for some people this happens with a fair amount of regularity. We can dream about the future before it happens here. We can have experiences in a dream that end up becoming a reality here. Just because when we go up to the astral, we're experiencing things that are almost like a flow of things that come down from the higher dimensions. Things originate from the causal world, the world of cause and effect, and they flow down into the physical. When we're in the astral, we're at a different higher vantage point. We can experience things from here before they actually happen in the physical. So yeah, you can definitely dream about the future and have actually things happen and come true and that kind of thing, for sure. Most dreams that we have are just random echoes of everything we do during the day, a mere astral repetition of our daily life. There's a large chunk of what we dream about. There's not any future premonitions there. There's not any messages. There's not anything of importance. A lot of stuff that we dream about is just a repetition of things that we do during the day. So, for example, if you had a rough day at work and you go home and you find yourself dreaming about the rough day at work, there's not necessarily anything symbolic that's there. There's not necessarily any messages. And that's important to remember, because a lot of people are really concerned about interpreting their dreams. And what we're talking about here is not all your dreams are anything or something that you can interpret into something else. Many of our dreams are just the ego continuing its projections. But saying that, though, there's another type of dreams, and you've all had these before. You've got your regular everyday dreams where you're dreaming about work, and you're dreaming about Christmas, and you're dreaming about the summer, and you're dreaming about whatever, but we've all had those dreams that are different. They're usually a lot more vivid, there's a lot more detail to them, and there's a sense of almost urgency or importance when we remember the dream. We find ourselves during the day, we just can't seem to get the dream out of our mind. It just carries with us. We all can probably remember dreams that we've had like that from our childhood, memories of particular dreams that stick with us. We've also had dreams that have repeated, or elements of dreams that have recurred, and that kind of stuff. Those dreams are different. The most important dreams we have, they're inner experiences of our being as our consciousness, our higher self. And they're associated with the superior emotional and the superior intellectual centers. Okay? Remember, we have the 5 inferior centers, the emotional, the intellectual, the instinctive, the motor, and the sexual. Then there's 2 additional centers that we can develop. The emotional center, the superior emotional, and the superior intellectual. Now, remember, the interesting thing about these centers is they're controlled by the being, the consciousness, the divine spark that we have within. They aren't controlled by the ego. So the superior emotional center and the superior intellectual center, they become tools of the soul, the consciousness, not the ego. So when these centers talk to us, there's something there that we need to hear. These centers can send us messages we need to grasp from our being or higher self. This is where we can find dreams that have almost that sense of premonition. This is where we can receive warnings and messages and all kinds of things that we need to understand. This is how our higher self can talk to us. It can talk to us during the day with the sense of intuition, which we've all experienced, but it also regularly talks to us at night through our dreams, through the imagery of our dreams, through the allegory and the parable and the symbols that we find within our dreams. Okay, so some of our dreams are just random thoughts of the ego. There's no importance to them, there's nothing to really interpret, there's no specific meaning, but not all dreams like that. There's dreams that we can have that are actually messages from a higher self. They're literally a communication from a different part of ourselves. The language of dreams is the language of parables, the symbolic language of the superior emotional center. The superior emotional center doesn't really use words and that kind of thing. It relies on symbols. The best analogy I have for this is, how would you communicate to somebody that spoke a different language than you? You resort to symbols and gestures and pictures of things, right? A lot of times when our higher self is communicating with us, because we're really not from the same place and we don't speak the same language, so to speak, the higher self resorts to symbols. allegory, parables, that kind of thing, to get the message across. These are worthy of interpretation. These are worthy of study, these types of dreams. And we'll look at some techniques today on how to distinguish, well, what is a regular dream of the ego, and what is a really important dream that might have a message for me, or a sense of a purpose, or perhaps premonition, or something like that. So we talked about what happens when we sleep. Basically, there's a process of unfoldment. We unfold into our astral body. The conscious goes into the astral body, but unfortunately the ego is still there under control. Dreams are simply the memories of what we do in the astral when we're asleep. The next thing we'll look at is, what is the astral plane anyways? The astral plane is part of the fifth dimension. Okay, right now we're sitting in 3 dimensions, length, width, and height. While we're sitting here in 3 dimensions, the 4th dimension flows through. The 4th dimension is time. After the 4th dimension, we get to the 5th dimension. The lower part of the 5th dimension is the astral world. The higher part of the 5th dimension is the mental world, or the mental plane. The astral world is associated with your emotions. The mental plane is associated with your thoughts. And you know where you go in your head when you think and you plan and you work all that stuff out? That's you working in the 5th dimension. Okay, we have access to the 5th dimension through the intellectual center. The best way to think of these dimensions, people usually talk of them as levels. I'll do that as well. Talk about dimensions as being almost arranged on one on top of each other, like rungs of a ladder or floors of a house. But really, all the dimensions, all 7 dimensions, interpenetrate each other. They're all around here all at once simultaneously. It's just that right now, our senses that we have are only tuned into the 3 dimensions we see before us. When we look at practices and techniques like meditation, these are things that we can use to tune in to different frequencies of the higher dimensions. Just like you can have a radio, and that radio will pick up whatever station you tune it to. All the other radio stations are in the air around it as electromagnetic waves, but whatever frequency you tune that radio to, that's the one that it'll hear and pick up from the air. We work the same way. Whatever frequency we tune our consciousness to, that's what we can perceive. Most of us spend our entire lives stuck just perceiving the 3 dimensions. It's like the dial on our radio is stuck and we can't pick up any other stations. But with practice, we can learn to tune in to the different dimensions. Okay? Every night when we go to sleep, it's like a switch is flicked. A switch is flicked? A switch is flicked. We stop tuning into the physical, and now all our senses, while we're asleep, have tuned in to a different dimension. Yes?
What are the 6th and the 7th creations?
Now, we'll get into that later. You're looking at the Buddhic and the Kausal and the Atmic worlds, and that's a whole other thing. Yes?
My understanding is that quantum physics, the area of quantum physics called superstring theory, that was recently developed in the 80s, as a means to reconcile the macroscopic and the microscopic worlds, the atomic and the subatomic worlds, speak of 9 dimensions, and they could well correlate with this model.
Yes.
Is that, would you say that that's fair to say there are 9 dimensions?
Well, it gets complicated if we could sidetrack. If we just look at the Tree of Life, which is the Kabbalist version of this, we have the 1st to the 3rd dimension is down here. There's a 4th dimension, which is time. There's a 5th, there's a 6th, there's the 7th dimension. But on top of that, there was 3 other additional dimensions for a total of 10. And what the Kabbalists usually saw as the 10th dimension was, for lack of a better term, God himself, representing that actual final dimension. So you can look at, God and then 9 additional dimensions below that. And you can look at that too, because if we have the 9 superior dimensions, and then we sit in the physical right here, and there's a reflection of that, which is the 9 inferior dimensions. And that's where, if you think of the 9 circles of Dante, that's where that comes from.
A secondary question. So our universe is comprised of 9 or 10 dimensions, and within each dimension exist planes? Is that how within the dimension there exist planes?
Yes, within the 5th dimension you've got the astral plane and the mental plane.
Okay, so each dimension consists of 1 or 2 planes?
Yes. Yeah, usually. Depends on when we go to the 4th dimension, there's 1 plane. The 5th dimension has 2 planes. The 6th dimension has 3 planes. The 7th dimension has 3 planes. That's just the way that... I keep pointing to this, and I shouldn't do that because we haven't talked about this, and that's weeks away. I'm sorry. It's handy. It's right there, and I know I'm doing this, and you're like, what is he explaining it? That's the Tree of Life. It's a map that we use for all sorts of things. Yes?
I read something a long time ago, and sequencing in the wrong order. But isn't it creation by sounds and geometry and matter and light? And
There's some allegories to that, yeah. When we look at the ray of creation as it travels down, there's different things created at different points. And those symbols you're given are all allegory for different worlds or different dimensions. The world of thought, the world of light, the world of matter, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, we'll get there later on. Weeks later on. So we're going to have the fifth dimension. Okay, yeah, we did this already. Yeah. We're in the fifth dimension. Fourth is the etheric dimension, sometimes called the vital dimension, sometimes called time. And there are more dimensions than that, as we could just refer to. One of the interesting things to look at, different dimensions are governed by different laws. Okay, different dimensions are governed by different laws. The physical world has 48 primary laws that govern it. Laws like, you can think of gravity being a law. You can think of karma being a law. You can think of return and recurrence being a law. Not only physical laws like, laws of kinetics, like for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, that kind of thing. There's also different laws like that govern this physical existence. A good one, for example, is Einstein's famous E equals mc squared. That's a law, that's a constant, and that belongs to this physical world. Now, when we go higher dimensionally, we get less laws. Okay? When we go to the astral, there's 24 laws. When we go even higher, we get 12, then we get 6, then we get 3, and then we get 1. And the 1 is basically the point of God, where the one law is His will. That's it. When we look at less laws, we see, consequently, more freedom. Okay? Less mechanicity. That's why when the ancient people had experiences in these higher dimensions, they said, oh, it's such a beautiful place, and everybody there is happy, and it's beautiful. So the higher dimensions to them became the various heavens and paradises of the world's religions. So heaven and paradises were nothing other than a different name for the higher dimensions. The closer you are to the light, the brighter the light shines. The higher you go dimensionally, the closer you are to the source of all things. And you can feel that energy stronger, and you can feel that radiation. So when the ancient people had experiences in the higher dimensions, that's where the concept of heaven came from. Now the opposite holds true. Remember, the universe is always balanced. If there's going to be light, there's going to be dark. Okay, and it's the light itself that casts the darkness. So if we have the heavens, the higher dimensions, beneath us we have the infra, the lower dimensions, and they have more laws. The dimension that sits right below the physical dimensionally, that has 96 laws. Okay, there's a greater degree of mechanicity and consequently suffering experienced by the intelligences that reside there. It's even further away from the light, so the dimmer the light becomes. When the ancient people saw or had experiences in the lower dimensions, they became the various hells of the world's religions. So the concept of heaven and hell is just a description of experiences of ancient peoples in the higher dimensions or in the lower dimensions.
So where do elementals sit as far as the dimensions go? Are they in the second dimension? Elementals?
Well, the different types, the ones that are closest to the physical, they're usually in the fourth and the fifth dimensions. So they're basically, if you look at, say, a plant, there's the plant as it sits, or let's look at a flame. The flame's even better because the flame we don't really associate it as living. If you look at a flame, what I'm seeing right now is the third dimensional manifestation of that flame. But as we go higher and look at that flame, we start seeing the elementals that are responsible for creating that flame.
Okay. And crystals would be second dimension? Rocks?
I'm not sure about crystals.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good.
Yeah.
If plants are in the second dimension, how can the tree be the one that has the highest energy on the planet? That's kind of contradictory.
It doesn't necessarily plants are three-dimensional, and they exist. Everything that you see before you in this room doesn't end at 3 dimensions. Everything that exists has reflections and ripples in the higher dimensions. That's why when you actually project into this room, we'll talk about this today and later on, you see this room. So you actually project in your bedroom, you see your bedroom, but you're looking at the fourth dimensional aspect of your bedroom. So there aren't things that just exist in a specific dimension, there's things that exist across multiple dimensions. Yes?
But if you place the trees in the second dimension of plants, and the natives and so many other people claim that they are the source of the highest form of energy.
Well, it's not, they're not just dimensionally. When we let's say we as people that don't have their consciousness awakened, when we look at a tree, we just see the three dimensions of that tree, the length, width, and the height. We can't see the other dimensional aspects of the tree. When you talk about Aboriginal people, one of the famous quotes was, you see the tree, but you don't see the tree, right? Because if somebody with their consciousness awakened, they're not just able to perceive the three dimensions of that tree, they're able to perceive that tree much higher. They're able to see more of the life force and the elementals and the animating principles behind that tree. Same thing as water and rocks and everything. It exists across multiple dimensions. The problem with being humanity today is we've lost a lot of those abilities. We've lost the ability to tune into those higher dimensions, so we're stuck in three dimensions. We just see length, width, and height, and that's it. We can't perceive what happens beyond that. We can't even see the element of time. We have to wait for time to happen. When you go in the higher dimensions, you can actually move around at any particular point in time. You're no longer bound by time anymore. Once you go up into the astral, you're existing in a dimension that's outside of time, which is another interesting concept. So when we look at the astral has less what I'm going to call laws then. Therefore, in the astral, we don't see gravity. Okay? We've all had the floating and falling dreams before, right? One of the reasons why we've had those dreams and didn't really be able to make sense of them is because we were in a place that had no gravity. So we could float over a building or a city, or we could suddenly perceive ourselves as falling and not having any ground underneath our feet. There's also no time in the astral. We've all experienced this as well. Everybody has fallen asleep on the couch in the afternoon for a nap or while they're watching TV, had a dream that spanned what was perceived as a certain amount of time, and that certain amount of time didn't match how long you took a nap for. You had a quick 10-minute nap, but you had a dream that seemed to span on for hours or days or something like that. That's an example of having an experience in a place that's not bound by time. Okay, we can have things that happen during a meditation, and it seems like it's gone for hours, and we come back and discover that we've been meditating for 25 minutes or something like that. It's hard to equate the experiences that we have in a place that has no time. There's different laws of physics governing motion as well. In the astral, you can do things like you can pass through what seems like a solid object. You can put your hand through a wall or a door, or you can move through a solid object, as an example. That's something that you can't do in the physical, but that's something you can do in the astral. As I mentioned, the no gravity experience, that causes the floating or falling sensations that we experience in dreams, as an example. Movement is via will instead of physical walking. You think where you want to go. Now, this is a really difficult concept to understand. For us in the physical plane, distance and time are very closely related. Okay, what's stopping you between being right here and being in your house right now? The time needed to get from point A to point B. The interesting thing is, because of time, everything for us has to happen linearly, which includes distance. If you take time out of the equation, everything folds in on itself. So every point is occurring simultaneously in the same place at the same time. So all you have to do is just simply use will to direct where you want to go. If you're actually projecting in this room right now and you wanted to be at your house, you'd simply be there just by focusing your thoughts on, I want to be at my house. Okay? We don't have physical legs and that kind of stuff. Consequently, sometimes when we're having a difficult experience in a dream, we would call these a nightmare, and we perceive the need to run. We try to run, and our brain tries to make our legs move, but we don't have legs. We don't have a physical body that works the same way, so consequently we can't move anywhere. That explains that experience everybody's had in a nightmare where you want to run, but you can't. Your feet are stuck. Or you feel like your feet are falling through the ground and you're falling in quicksand. That's because we have the different laws of physics governing motion, and you can actually meld and pass through solid objects and that kind of thing. So we can pass through solid objects, we can move great distances instantly. You're in your bedroom, if you want to be at the pyramids of Egypt, you simply focus on, I want to be at the pyramids of Egypt, bring an image of them to your mind, and that's where you go. Okay, it's a hard thing to think about, but it's something interesting happens to distance and concepts when we take out time. Okay, we tend to think of time as a straight line, but really time is like a closed circle. Okay, like almost like a black hole, a very dense point where everything occupies the same space at the same time. Yes?
Isn't that Einstein's also theory of relativity where A touches B?
Yeah, Yeah, you get into all that kind of stuff too, and then we talk about wormholes and time travel and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but it's all related. So these unusual laws account for most of the classic nightmares we experience. Experiences like dreams of falling. There's no physical ground that we stand on. Suddenly in a dream you can be under the assumption that there's nothing under my feet, there's nothing under my feet, therefore I'm falling, and you can fall indefinitely because there is no solid ground. There's no gravity to give you that orientation. Being able to run when frightened, or feet getting stuck in the ground when trying to walk. That's explained by the difference in laws in the astral. We don't understand where we are. We think it's just like the physical, so we try to move around. The astral world appears similar to the physical. People see everything in a form so similar to the physical, you don't even suspect you're out of your physical body. That's the problem. You don't even know. Okay? Think of the dreams that you have. You just go about your daily business. Okay? Many times in the early stages of learning how to astrally project during meditation, I think a lot of people are successful. They don't realize it. They just sit there doing everything that they're doing. Okay? We'll look at some techniques today to see how we trigger the difference. One of the earliest experiences that I had in the astral was I was in my bedroom. I was just in my bedroom. That was the consciousness at the time. I was aware I was in my bedroom. Okay, there was my bed. It had the same colored bedspread, and there was my dresser and everything. It looked exactly like my bedroom. It wasn't until I looked out the window and looked across the street that I discovered that the outside wasn't the same. So this was my bedroom. Everything was the same. The bedspread's in the dresser, and there's the window with the golden palace outside the window. And then I realized that I wasn't in the physical anymore. I was somewhere else. Another experience, I was in the middle of the night, I woke up and I wanted a glass of water. That's a normal thing. You wake up, you want a glass of water, you're thirsty. So I got out of my bed, just like I normally would, and I'm walking down the hallway to get a glass of water, and I walk downstairs and go to the kitchen, I open the fridge, and then I saw something out of the corner of my eye, and I have a window right by my fridge, and I looked outside and studied, and the sky was like purple. I thought, what is going on? This guy's panicked a little bit, thought there was something weird going on. And then that was when I realized that I was in the astral, because it was something that was different. It was a pattern that didn't fit. Many times, I don't know what people are expecting. A flashing neon sign that says, welcome to the astral, a disembodied voice that says, congratulations, you're here. It's a transition that we do every night. It's natural. There's no immediate warning sign. And when we go to the lower levels of the astral, everything looks like it is right here. If you astrally projected to this room, this is pretty much what you would see for the most part. You would see chairs, you'd see pictures, you'd see the fourth dimensional aspect of everything in this room. Yes?
So I think I always had the wrong perception that if you're lucid dreaming, when you're dreaming, you are aware that as if you're awake. But if you're lucid dreaming and you wake up and that dream is so real, and you remember it so well, that is a lucid dream.
Excuse me.
Yes?
You say our consciousness goes into, projects into the astral, and the ego goes with it. At what point, specific point, do we lose the influence of the ego?
That's what we're going to look at, because that's the key, is triggering that shift of consciousness and suddenly kicking the ego out and taking control of the vehicle. That specific point, that is the lucid dream. Because you have a normal dream and that's the ego doing its thing, but sometimes it's suddenly, wait a second, this isn't real, I'm dreaming. That's because your consciousness has just suddenly woken up and taken control of that car. And it's from that point when we have the awareness that we're in a dream, that's when we get to take over. That's when the consciousness is now operating and the ego isn't determining our reality. The problem with most dreams is the ego is projecting onto the astral. We can't perceive the reality. I like to use the analogy of having a virtual reality helmet on, where we just see immediately what's projected in front of us. We're oblivious to the true nature of our surroundings. Okay, what we have to do in the lucid dream, that's like suddenly tearing that virtual reality helmet off and perceiving the reality of the astral, not what we project onto it. Okay, that's the step that we have to trigger. And in the early stages, that's fuzzy. We only perceive reality for a few seconds, and then the ego takes back over. And then we meld back into the dream, and then we become aware of dreaming again, but then the ego takes back over. Just like when we practice a meditation, you can focus your mind, but then the ego takes over. And then you realize and you focus your mind, but the ego takes over. You can actually do that when you're lucid dreaming, and that's why when you're just learning this technique, it's difficult to figure out at what state what's happening and what is the ego and what is the consciousness. But with practice, we can develop that consciousness so it gets better and better, and we can take firmer and firmer control of what we're doing in the astral. Yes.
So would it be fair to say that if our dreams are extensions of what happens during the day, simply by virtue of being exposed to this material here tonight, we should all possibly be able to lucid dream tonight? Because we're exposed to this material, right? So the extension of that tonight, as we dream tonight, by virtue of this material we've been exposed to, would, in theory, allow us to lucid dream tonight.
Here's another question. Based on this, how do you know you're not dreaming right now?
Exactly. That's exactly.
Right? That's the catch that we find ourselves. That's why part of today we're going to look at some very specific techniques and practices, because that's the whole point of this statement right here. How do you know you're not dreaming right now? How do you know you're not in the astral right now? Okay, because what's the difference between this and a dream? Remember that no matter how weird, how wacky, and how unusual our dreams are, we perceive them as if it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. And we sit there through the dream not being aware that it is actually us in a different existence, in a different level of consciousness. Yes?
Isn't that like emotionally based and by the speed of thought, which would be higher than the speed of light? So like you feel, you think you feel it is.
Getting all deep on
It's
it
a
again.
little bit different than here.
Yes and no, because when we talk about thought, now you're talking about moving from the astral plane into the mental plane, which is a different level altogether. And we'll look at that a bit later on. But yeah, we'll look at some different techniques to figure out where you are. But yeah, when you start talking about emotions, that's the level of the astral, and thought exists at even a higher level. That's the level of the mental plane. Astral and mental, both being two aspects of the fifth dimension.
Well, actually, we could be almost in astral plane now, because we are concentrating on what you're telling us. We're not letting the ego come in and say, hey, you should be doing this and doing that.
Yeah, so just by focusing and living in the present moment, you're developing that consciousness. Absolutely. Yeah.
So when you say in the physical plane, time is flowing through us. So in the astral plane, what would you say is flowing through us? You said the mental portion?
You can't really think like that. Yeah, it's not like
okay.
that. It's just we've existed outside of time.
Okay.
And that's why we can do things like look at the Akashic records and see any point in time. It's because we've existed outside that. It's a different vantage point. So this is a really important point that I'm going to hammer on for the next couple of weeks, is being able to distinguish where we are. Because, like I said, there's no flashing neon sign, there's no disembodied voice, there's no immediate radical change. Everything doesn't become cartoon-like, or everything doesn't become balls of energy or something. Just think of the things that you dream about. That is the astral. It is pretty much the same as the physical. Okay, so it's always important to remember that. How do you know where you are? Lucid dreaming then is simply the awakening of consciousness during dreams. So there you are having a normal dream, and then for some reason something happens and you suddenly become aware, wait a second, this is not the physical. This is not my physical body. What has happened at that point is your consciousness has suddenly awoken. Okay? It's suddenly taken control of the car, of the astral vehicle, and you realize where you are and what you're doing. Okay? The whole concept of lucid dreaming is realizing we're dreaming and then taking control of the astral vehicle. It's like tearing off that virtual reality helmet and being able to perceive the true reality of the astral. Okay? Because the astral conforms to thought. All that stuff that's in your head right now, imagine if it was actually manifesting in front of you. Imagine daydreaming about a fun event from your past and it actually becomes what you see. Okay? That's what happens in the astral. But remember, we don't have one thought. We have like thousands of thoughts occurring all at the same time, flying through our mind. They all imprint themselves onto the astral, and that becomes the random, sometimes non-sequitur, nonsensical, crazy stuff that we dream about. Okay? All that stuff projects onto the astral. It becomes the reality that we perceive. When you go to the astral, you can find people. If I wanted to, I wouldn't. It sounds kind of weird. But if I wanted to find you tonight, I could go find you in the astral, and you'd look like a sleepwalker. Because you wouldn't see what I would be seeing. You'd be oblivious. You'd be going about your own, whatever you were seeing. You'd create your own world, your own thoughts, and all that kind of stuff. Okay? And I can't wake you up. Okay? You can't shake somebody out of that state. They have to trigger it themselves. If you awoke consciousness tonight, if you were lucid dreaming and I was lucid dreaming, we could find each other. We could talk, we could do whatever, and we could come back to our physical bodies, and we could call each other up, and we could talk about what we did. We both remember the experiences. But you can find your friends, you can find your family in the astral, but they won't remember unless their consciousness is awoke too. They won't even be able to perceive you. Sometimes they might say, I think you were in one of my dreams last night. I've been able to do that and verify that with people. They don't remember the conversation. They just have a sense of, I think you were in my dream. I think I had a dream about you. That's about all they're able to pick up, just the notion that you may have been involved in the dream, but they can't recall in great detail anything that you did. Yes?
What if two people have similar dreams? Like I say, I had a dream with someone, and that person had a dream with me, and they're similar, but they're not identical. Could that be different expressions of the mind of the same thing?
Or what often happens is you're literally having the same experience because you're in the same place. It's like a shared consciousness sort of thing.
But your mind is expressing it with different symbols, perhaps?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a possibility of that as well. Yeah.
So, dream of a conversation with a deceased loved one.
Yeah.
Would be what?
This is the problem. This is where it gets dicey. You've got two options there. A, either that's your projection of that person, just because they were on your mind and you were worried about them, or B, you have went and found them and are communicating with them. Okay? If your consciousness isn't awake, if you're not in a lucid dream, it's really hard to discern that, what actually happened. Because that's the problem. While our consciousness is asleep, it's really hard to discern what we're actually doing. So if you're dreaming with a good regularity about that, that may very well be you seeking that person out. And that's something that you can do from the astral. You can find people who have passed on. You can find people that you know who are deceased, and you can communicate with them. The problem is, remember that they're there with their consciousness bottled up in their ego as well.
So just simply by virtue of being deceased doesn't mean your consciousness is awoken.
No.
So you could still be sleepwalking in the astral.
Waiting for that return and recurrence, right? Because when we're not in the physical body, we're in the astral. And then we come in the physical body, then we're in the astral, where we're caught in that wheel of samsara. So yeah, just because somebody is deceased doesn't mean that they're of awoken consciousness. Remember the concept of the 108 lives and the transmigration of souls? Yeah, just because somebody passes on doesn't mean that they're awake. You can find people in the astral that have passed on, and you can see for yourself that they're still in that dream state. They still perceive the astral to be the world around them. They don't know that they're deceased. They're still going through their astral house and going to their astral job. That whole model of everything they had in the physical exists for them in the astral, and they don't know that they're deceased. That's why we can see things like ghosts and stuff like that, going through the same patterns, wearing the same clothes, doing the same kind of stuff, because they're caught in that pattern. They don't have their consciousness awoken.
So what does it take for a deceased person to awaken in the superluminous?
The practice here and now. And
so if they haven't done it in this dimension, and when they're deceased, they won't have an opportunity to wake up.
If they haven't been able to develop anything, then no. That's why we focus so much. That's why if we can take control of the dream state with the first stage via lucid dreaming and later on by astral projection, if we can awaken consciousness in the astral, then we have a permanent consciousness in the astral that is retained when we're deceased. Okay, so we can literally be deceased and have the ultimate lucid dream and realize that we're now existing at a different level, at a different dimension. That's why the work we do in the physical is so important, because this physical body it's only going to last so long. It's a product of the physical world, and it is bound by time, and there is no escaping it. At some point, this physical body does deteriorate. It's physical. There's no way around that. Can we continue the consciousness? That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do, the whole concept of awakening consciousness, incarnating the soul, all that kind of stuff. Yes?
So if emotion creates thoughts, and thoughts create reality, an instant reality in the fifth dimension, for better or not, so would that mean that people that die and they have good or they don't have too much understanding, or those who do, they would actually literally place themselves in different dimensions?
Not really following that.
Say a person, a murderer, dies.
Yeah.
And he's in the fifth dimension without a body. Or a person that was a really good person dies and it's in the same dimension without a body. how does that differentiate? Is it because your emotions create your thoughts, and then you place yourself in each dimension because it's instant? You don't have to wait for it to materialize. Like, if there's only one fifth dimension, how
Yes.
is there such dark places and bright places? Like
Because
people
the,
that
the
die-
dark places isn't the fifth dimension. The dark
Okay.
places are the infradimensions, the one below us.
And they work the same way? You think, you feel, you think it happens?
Yeah, but we'll look at that. This is getting pretty complicated. We'll look at that later on. But there are lower dimensions. The only confusing thing is you access the lower dimensions by going through the fifth dimension. And we've all been to the lower dimension. Ever had a nightmare? That's what a nightmare is. You find yourself drawn down into those lower dimensions. There's many ways that can happen. One of the most common ways is eating a heavy meal. Creates a lot of biophysical activity where your stomach is. In addition to the chakras that we looked at, what I didn't get into and what I'm not going to get into is there's infernal chakras. There's reflections of those. And when those infernal chakras become active, you can find yourself polarized in such a way that you're drawn to the inferior dimensions, which is what you experience as nightmares.
Don't they say though that you still have to learn and have lessons when you are in the astral, when you have left your body?
Mhm.
So maybe you come back with hopefully in the next life come back with a better idea of what
Yes.
you should be doing.
Yes, and that's something that absolutely can happen. Yeah, you can carry on that knowledge into the next life, which then gives you the more experiences. People that are born with the ability to easily astral project or have regular lucid dreams or are psychic or can see the future, these are people that have usually been working on the path and they're learning stuff and bringing it back each time. And the other interesting thing about the astral, which is why it's so important to get there, that's where the real teachers are. Okay, the real teachers with the real knowledge and the real intelligence. That's where this is the physical world is kindergarten. The real stuff is up there. Yeah.
So what's the fifth?
Sorry, what's the fifth?
Yeah. If you have to go to the fifth to go lower or higher.
Yeah, it's just the way that the fifth dimension is arranged. That's how you can get to, because you can't get to the lower dimensions by going through the physical or the fourth. You have to go through the fifth. We'll get into that later on.
So no, but like, is the fifth emotional then?
No, the fifth is one half is astral, one half is mental. So the astral and mental together form the fifth dimension. Okay, when we have a lucid dream, instead of our ego dictating where we go and what we do, we consciously control our astral experiences. Okay, so with a lucid dream, the ego is no longer driving the car. Now the consciousness is driving the car. The divine spark of us is driving the car. We're aware of what we're doing and where we're going. Now, most people live in the internal worlds. Most people live in the higher worlds, the astral, like they do in the physical, controlled by the same egos, doing the same routines. So that's why I mentioned earlier, it's not unusual for our dreams to be about work and our hobbies and places we go and things that we do and people that are around us. It's not unusual to dream about our friends and our co-workers and significant others, that kind of thing. Okay, just a continuation of what we do during the day. Now, when we start looking at the concept of dreaming, one of the questions that people usually have, or one of the concerns is, well, okay, so I might be doing all this interesting stuff, and I'm going to the astral and having all these experiences, and sometimes I can receive like premonitions and messages from a higher self, but I haven't remembered a dream in days, or for some people weeks, or for some people months. Or I can remember my dreams, but nothing that I could interpret anything from, is random bits and pieces and that kind of stuff. Is there a way that we can learn to remember our dreams? Plato once said, a man is known by his dreams. Okay, there's a lot of really important information that we can get about ourselves and about our spiritual path through dreams. That's why we've got a man is known by his dreams. Many initiates, people on this path, they work in the higher dimensions while they sleep, but they don't remember what they did upon waking. If we're on a spiritual path, it's not unusual. Just like we're sitting here during the day, this would be reflected at night. So at night we'd be receiving teachings and practices and experience and that kind of stuff, which goes along with what you were saying, right? We're going to see a reflection at night that happens during the day. The problem is we don't really remember any of it. We can't bring that knowledge into our consciousness to actually make use of it. Masters instruct their disciples while they're out of the physical body. It's not unusual for us to have teachers, intelligences that we can work with in the higher dimensions that can teach us or show us things. The problem is we don't bring that knowledge fully into the physical awareness, into the physical memory, where we can make use of those teachings. During sleep, we're often subjected as well to many tests and trials. There's things that we can receive, lessons, things that we need to learn, things we need to develop that we just don't really have the memory for. So that's the problem with not remembering our dreams. We're not only missing out on those opportunities for messages from our higher self and premonitions and that kind of stuff, there's esoteric knowledge we might be missing. Just like during the day we have practices and all that kind of stuff in the classes, there's things that happen at night too that we might not be remembering. Yes?
So it's safe to say that the people here present tonight, at night, while we're all asleep, are receiving instruction from higher beings.
It's very possible, absolutely.
Therefore, thereby allowing us to be here present. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here if we weren't receiving the higher instruction, right?
It's a really good way of thinking of that. Yeah.
Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, no, this is good. I like it. Okay, studying our dreams allows us to further study the action of the ego in the five centers and to uncover hidden egos. We'll talk a little bit more about this next week, but if during the day we talk about self-observing, right? Being aware of thoughts, being aware of actions, and being aware of emotions that we have during the day, we eventually want to extend that awareness to be during the night as well. Because oftentimes the egos that we have during the day that are unconscious or hidden, we can see them manifesting at night. So studying of our dreams, even the mundane ones, we can use those to learn a lot about the different egos that we have. And I think I used that silly analogy last week. I have a friend, he's very mellow, he's very laid back. Everybody said he's a really nice guy, he never loses his temper, he's really calm, he's really mellow. The dreams he has are horrible. They're all violent and graphic, and he's running around shopping malls with machetes and all this stuff. And he's like, "Do you think that's okay? Do you think that's normal?" And I don't know. That's what he's doing. He has these egos repressed during the day that manifest at night. Another common one, which is a little bit kind of awkward to talk about. Many people during the day, we think of lust. And you think, well, I don't have a problem with the ego of lust because, I'm in a monogamous relationship and that kind of stuff, and I don't really, do things like that. But oftentimes we find that at night a lot of our dreams can involve those elements. So egos that we have that don't always manifest during the day, sometimes we can catch those hidden egos manifesting at night to get more of an idea of what comprises our psychology. And we'll talk a bit more about that next week when we talk about looking at the hidden side of our psychology, the side of our subconscious that we can't really see. Remember, the problem with those egos is they're the ones that we can't see, yet they're the ones that exert a lot of influence on our lives. They're pulling the strings, but we don't know who the puppet master is. We just get the urge to dance, and we start dancing, but we don't know why, and we don't know who the puppet master is. That's why we want to uncover those hidden egos. And through our dreams, that's just a different window. Our dreams are a different lens that we can use to discover our true self, which is why Plato said a man is known by his dreams, because there's no restraint that we have during the physical. All this stuff is free to manifest, uncontrolled in the dream state. That's why, too, if you've ever been to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, they say, tell me about your dreams. Tell me the last dream you can remember. Do you have any recurring dreams? Tell me about them. What's one of the dreams you remember from your childhood? Because they know that your dreams are just a lens, they're just a microscope into your psychology, and we can use that for ourselves. So consequently, we must not only study thoughts, actions, and emotions during the waking state, during the state that we're in right now, we think, but we don't really know, but also during the sleep state as well. Okay, so ideally, self-observation doesn't just accompany your waking life, it accompanies the dream state as well, the different experiences that happen to us in dreams. And we'll talk more about that next week. You can't work to eliminate egos, remember, if you don't identify them. The first step in changing our psychology is to identify the egos, to observe them. Because after we identify them and observe them, then we can comprehend them. Once we comprehend them, then we can eliminate them. The ability to work consciously in the astral world is of utmost importance to those wishing to awaken consciousness. Okay, it's really important that we're able to do this. We are already there every night. We just have to start learning how to recognize we are dreaming so we start to take control. Okay? We'll talk more about astral projection with meditation exercises later on. Okay? That's harder to do. It doesn't matter whether you are doing a meditation for astral projection or whether you have a lucid dream, it's the same thing. You're awake and conscious in the astral dimension. It doesn't matter how you get there. With dream yoga, it's easier to do because you're already there. You just have to realize where you are. Whereas an actual meditation exercise for astral projection, you've got to put your body and the mind in the right state and then unfold yourself into the astral. With lucid dreaming, you're already there. You just have to recognize you're there. Yeah.
What happens when you dream, and I know you have an average of like 80 dreams a night, but what happens when you dream and you don't remember anything when you wake up? Is it that you didn't go to that place, or you just can't recall it, or it wasn't significant enough?
You just can't recall it. That's all. It's so many things that you just weren't able to pull back into your physical memory.
So when you can recall it, it's so much more significant that you're meant to recall it, and when you don't, it's just kind of like a subconscious thought.
It could be, but there's so many points during our day we can't recall. You couldn't sit down right now and outline everything you did for every minute of the day. You'd have huge gaps. You'd remember, this is what I ate for breakfast, and then I was at work, and then it was 11, and there's gaps in our memories of what we did during the day. So there's going to be gaps in our memories of what we do during the night as well. And just like you can have, and when you look back across your memories of the last month, you don't remember every day. You can remember specific days when things out of the ordinary happened, but you don't remember every single regular mundane day. It's just the memories are punctuated with specific events at various times, but it's not, you can't remember everything. Your dream memory is like that as well. Yeah.
So we remember what we're supposed to, what's significant to us, even if we can't understand
Not
it.
necessarily, no.
Sometimes perhaps there's a hidden message.
Sometimes you can
Symbols.
have something important and you forget it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that's just the way your memory works. It doesn't selectively remember the good stuff or the bad stuff. It remembers sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So yes, you can have specific things that you remember that were important. You can also have random nonsensical things that aren't important that you remember. Yes, you can forget all the nonsensical random things. Yes, you can forget the important things as well. That's just the way the process works. So we go to the astral every night. We just have to start learning how to recognize that we're there so we can take control of the process. Dreams are the gateway to the astral dimension. This is the really important thing to remember. Dreams become the gateway to the astral dimension. The first thing we're going to do, this is your homework. If you haven't done this already, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start a dream diary. Okay, if you really want to do this properly, if you want to do the dream yoga thing, this is where you start. You're going to start by writing a dream diary. Okay, what I mean by a dream diary is simply writing down your dreams. As simple as that sounds, start a diary. Okay, what you're going to do for this is keep a notebook and pencil by your bed to record anything you can remember as soon as you wake up. Not downstairs in the kitchen, not downstairs, I mean right beside your bed. Okay, and tuck it under your pillow if you want to, right on the nightstand. Yes?
If we wake up in the middle of the night remembering something, should we write it down immediately?
Yes.
Or wait till the morning?
Write it down immediately.
Immediately. Okay.
Dream memories are weird. If you don't write them down immediately, they are gone. They disappear very rapidly. Yes?
I have a suggestion for that, because in the middle of the night you're so sleepy you get lazy. Just write keywords that like red or car or flower or whatever.
Yeah, you're going to find that that's something you're going to inherently do anyway. You're not going to write a novel each morning. You're just going to write down the key things that you remember. You're going to invent your own dream shorthand, basically, by this process. Because no one wants to lay in bed for an hour and write dreams. I remember doing that once. When you first start out, maybe this is my next thing. Okay, I'll back up a sec. When you first start out, what happens is you can't remember much. You might remember a word or a couple words or a couple paragraphs or something like that. But over time, your memory gets better and better and better. It's almost like you're training yourself to remember your dreams, because that's exactly what you're doing. And there comes a point when you got to stop writing. I remember at one point one morning I'd sat there for 45 minutes with a notebook, and I had like 12 pages. And I was like, this is okay. I got to come up with some kind of a shorthand or something for this. I don't have time to do this all the time. Okay, that's basically what happens. You will start to remember more and more things. The cool thing about your dream diary is you can watch your memories getting better. you can go to it after doing this for a while, and you can look at how you just started writing a few random unconnected comments or words or symbols, and then you can suddenly discover that you've developed a whole slew of pages and pages and pages of really interesting details and all kinds of stuff. You're going to review that diary every month, looking for repetitive elements, this will be important shortly, and verify the gradual progression of your dream memory. You can prove to yourself that, hey, I am remembering more of my dreams. Maybe the first week you remember 2 dreams, the next week 3 dreams, the week after that 2 again, the week after that suddenly 6, and then 8, and then 9, and then you've gone from sentences or words to sentences to paragraphs to pages on your dreams. Okay, this is really effective. Everyone I know that's actually done this and kept with it has said, wow, I remember way more about my dreams than I used to. I can remember way more details, and once you start writing down your dreams, very strange things start happening. Okay, you start becoming more conscious of the process of dreaming, and this is where you get into lucid dreaming and all that kind of stuff. This is some things that we're looking for. These are some clues that tell you it might not be a random, just a regular eagle kind of dream. There's sometimes little clues that can pop up to tell us that we might have been dreaming about something significant. Dreams which occur in other time periods or other eras. During the day, you don't see other time periods and eras, you see one. So the eagle's projections tend to be focused around things like the time that you're in right now. Okay? Dreams that occur in unfamiliar environments or locations or involve interaction with unfamiliar people. Everybody dreams about being at work. Okay, everybody dreams about their significant other or their friends or their family, but we've all had those dreams in some location where you're like, I have no idea where that was. Okay? The memories that we project in the astral are going to be things that we've experienced. If we're in a place we've never been before, how do we get there? Okay? We've all dreamed about friends, family, and coworkers, but we've all had those dreams with, who the hell was that? You can remember the dream, and you can remember being with people, you can remember the faces, the conversations, but you have no idea who that person was. Okay? These are more likely us having very specific astral experiences. Different time periods and eras and unfamiliar people and unfamiliar environments, many times these are also fragments of past life experiences as well. So through analyzing and studying our dreams, we start to see common elements. Next thing you know, we're starting to unravel different aspects of our previous existences as well. Okay? For example, you can dream about, I remember a particularly vivid one. I was dreaming about somebody and I knew I knew it was a close friend, but it wasn't their face. And it was just them from what they looked like in a previous existence. Through my dreams, I was actually accessing my memories of a past life. So that's some of the things that we're looking for. Now, we have to continue to keep a record of our dreams until we discover something called the initiator element. Now, this is really interesting. You're going to start writing down your dreams. And you're just going to write down your dreams, and you're just going to write down everything that you can remember. And you're going to do that for a while. And then you're going to be slowly reviewing your dreams, and then one day your jaw's going to hit the floor when you realize there's something that you've been dreaming about over and over and over and over again. That is the initiator element. It's something planted in your dreams by your higher self to trigger you into the lucid dream state. And it's one of these, I remember doing this and thinking, I don't know, and then literally discovering it. Like after really understanding some of these teachings, going through my book one day, wondering what this could possibly be, and then it suddenly totally blew me away that every single dream I'd had for an extended period of time had this in it. I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's different for everybody. So if I tell you what it is, you'll think it's yours and you'll just try to dream about that. So I'm not going to say. But it was something in my dreams that was always there. And it's something that everybody who does this discovers. You discover you dream about the same thing over and over again. It could be all kinds of things. It could be a repetition of a scene. It could be a place. It could be an event. It could be a symbol. It could be some sort of a creature, animal, person, whatever. There's going to be some element that you keep finding in your dreams. Okay? There was one aspect of my dreaming. I'll just use this as an example. I'll tell you anyways. My grandfather, when I was younger, he had a house. It was a particular odd old house in England, and I used to go there a lot as a child. And it's something that I always dreamed about. I would always find myself in this damn house at some point in my dreams. That to me became the initiator element. It was just something that worked its way as a symbol into that dream. That house became symbolic for walking into the astral. The neat thing about the initiator element is some people might have it. I might have described this to you and you think, wait a sec, I dream about whatever all the time, a house, a place, a person. You might know about that, but some people, it will develop. So you start this dream diary, and it's almost like you're saying to your higher self, hey, look, I'm paying attention now. Is there anything you want to tell me? And your higher self says, okay, and then it starts interjecting that. And it's something you've got to experience it for yourself, because it's literally when it happens, it's jaw dropping. It's like, I can't believe that I didn't even notice this. I dream about the same thing all the time. It's not a huge thing. It's not like every dream is about. It's not a recurring dream. It's just an element, something that's present in every single one of your dreams. That's always there. It's not obvious. It doesn't work itself into the scene. It's just part of the scenery at some point, whether it be a person, an animal, a thing, whatever. Yes.
Isn't there, even though I'm not aware of it right now, but isn't there like a mantra that you can do as soon as you wake up, or a few minutes after you wake up, that will bring you back to your dreams? Like, I've heard of this before. I don't know what it is, and if there is one, are we going to get into that? That when you wake up, you do it, and it takes you back to your dream.
Yeah, we'll get into that for sure.
But not today?
I think it might be today. I'm not sure whether it's this one or astral projection. We'll see. Wisely used, the initiator element leads us to the awakening of a dream. It's the door to the astral. We consciously associate this with dreaming. So next time this happens, whoa, it's that thing that I dream about. Wait a sec, this is a dream. It just becomes a trigger for us. It's a trigger we plant ourselves in our own conscious mind to tell us that we're in the astral. Okay, so for me, every time I found myself in the living room of my grandfather's house again, here's the house. It's that house, I'm dreaming, and then suddenly I would be in the lucid dream experience. Okay, or the initiator element, and there's another aspect of it for me. Suddenly I'm doing something in a dream, and there it is. That means that I'm dreaming. Okay, it's a key. It's a little trigger that tells us, or that we equate with being in a dream state. And every time we see it, it's a little signal that tells us, guess what, you're dreaming. It's just something we use to trigger that lucid dream, to trigger that awakening of consciousness. And it's one of those things that I remember sitting through this and going, whatever, and then actually discovering it for myself, and then being able to use that tool. Being able to have that initiator element show up in a dream and suddenly have that realization and recognize that you're then lucid dreaming. Upon waking, one of the things we can do is fall back to sleep, visualizing the initiator element to enter consciously back into the dream. So if you wake up in the morning, you can focus on that initiator element to fall back to sleep, and then because it's on your mind when you're falling asleep, if you concentrate on that, you could do this every night even. It doesn't have to be when you wake up. You could fall asleep thinking of that, whatever it is. Okay, for example, I could fall asleep thinking of my grandfather's house. If I put my concentration on that, what will happen is when I go to sleep, because that image is in my consciousness, it becomes the reality I experience in the astral, but that reality is the trigger to tell me that I'm lucid dreaming, so I instantly wake up right into the dream. Okay, so I find myself before the initiated element, whatever it happens to be, but consciously and recognizing that I'm there. Let's look at some more techniques for lucid dreaming. There's little habits that we can do during the day that will repeat themselves at night while we sleep and assist us in becoming aware during our dreams. Okay, there's the one that we find inside our dreams itself. That's the initiator element. We have to subconsciously almost put that there. That's why the dream diary is so important. Okay, writing down our dreams helps us remember our dreams, helps us study the egos in our dreams. It's like a different map of our psychology, so to speak. It helps us eventually discover the initiator element, which helps trigger lucid dreaming. There's also other things that we can do during the day in the physical that can become triggers for that lucid dream state. These practices work and are usually really effective because the habits that we do during the day repeat themselves at night. Okay, anything that we can make a habit that we do during the day, we're going to do at night as well. But these little techniques I'm going to give you, they're techniques to play upon the difference between the laws in the physical and in the astral. Okay, and when they become habits at night, when we try them, these little tricks are meant to point out to us that the laws are no longer the same anymore, a trigger to let us know that we're in the astral. The first one is the technique of discernment. Now this is an interesting one. This is one of the first ones that actually worked for me. Discernment is simply questioning your surroundings. Okay, where are you right now? Do you even know where you are? Do you even know what's around you? We tend to not really pay much attention to our surroundings. During the day, at regular intervals, take a minute or two to question, where am I? What am I doing? Am I in the physical or am I in the astral? You can do it every time you walk from one room to another, as an example. Okay, you can do it and set a little alarm to go off every few minutes, and not every few minutes, every few hours, and question. And every time your cell phone rings, whatever, you want to just like we talked about equating a routine activity with self-observation, this is another thing you can equate with a routine activity, questioning where you are. Like right now, where are you? This is a kind of a weird place to be, is it not? This is not your house, this is not your home. Who are these people? You don't know these people around you. How do you know you're not dreaming? How do you know this isn't the astral? Yes?
So would you say it'd be a good idea to also use the technique of discernment and self-observation at the same time?
You could. I did. When my little computer alarm went off, took a moment to self-observe what I was thinking, what I was feeling, and that kind of stuff, and then stop, question my surroundings. Where am I? What am I doing? Where is this place? Why am I here? Just questions like that. Just asking where you are. Yes?
So if you were awake and you're in the astral, let's say, wouldn't you feel uncomfortable about being in the physical at the same time?
If you were awake in the astral, would you feel uncomfortable with being in the physical at the same time?
Because you're physically awake, so you are in the physical. But mentally or emotionally, spiritually, whatever you want to call it, you're in the astral. Wouldn't that feel really uncomfortable to be in the physical?
No, that's usually a really neat point. And it's one of those points of almost, I'm going to call it like revelation, of being in the astral, but being aware of your physical body at the same time, being in duality. It's a really strange awareness. And it's one of those things that once you experience yourself as a duality, being in two places at the same time, it ranks up there with seeing your physical body as well, which is another kind of neat experience. Being in your room, turning around. I told you this story before. I don't think I have. A guy gets a knock at the door late at night. He hears somebody knocking at the door. He's all annoyed, so he crawls out of bed, goes down the hallway, opens the front door. There's nobody there. He thinks it's, the drunken kids or whatever late at night playing a trick on him. So he closes the door, walks back, goes to his bedroom, and freezes because he sees somebody lying in his bed. He's like, what? Did somebody sneak in while I had the door open? There was no way anybody could get near me. So he's all prepared to confront this person in the bed. When he gets close enough, he sees himself lying in the bed. He's in the astral. He didn't know. That's the astral and the physical are so close, we often don't know where we are. Yes?
But that's like a moment of enlightenment almost. Like that's almost a moment of enlightenment.
Oh, yeah.
When you're in a really high vibe, and that's everything feels nice. But what if you reach the astral, and you are in the physical, you are awake?
You can't be in the astral and the physical awake at the same time. You're going to shift consciousness. That consciousness is going to, even if you're doing a meditation, your physical body is actually going to fall asleep for you to be in the astral.
What about daydreaming?
With daydreaming? Oh, okay. Yeah. That's when you're daydreaming. You're like, that's the part of the mental that you're always accessing. It's not quite the same thing. It's not quite the same. You're not fully transferring into that vehicle. You're just accessing a part of it. It's like a tentacle. You're attached to that body, and you're drawing some of the energy. You haven't fully transferred your consciousness into that vehicle. In order for you to fully transfer your consciousness, you have to shut this vehicle down, which is sleep, and go into the next one. Yes?
So you said at some point during meditation, if you actually project your physical body is technically falling asleep. So for people beginning with meditation, if they do feel like they are falling asleep during meditation, is that actually them beginning to actually project, or is it actually them maybe actually falling asleep?
Actually falling asleep.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be both. The proper state for astral projection is physical body asleep, mind awake. So this is what I'm teaching with the concentration thing that you're harping on all the time. You need to develop concentration, because if you can concentrate on a single thought at the point your physical body falls asleep, you're now in the astral consciously. That's the whole key. And not just the astral, you can then, because you're conscious, you can then go to other dimensions like the mental, even higher sometimes as well, which gives us the different states of religious ecstasy people experience during meditation. And samadhi and the illuminated void, they're just different points on the dimensional highway, I guess you could say. So during the day, you're just questioning what are you doing, okay? And if you do this properly, the technique the experience I told you about that day, I was in my bedroom. So I was in my bedroom, and I just had because I did it at regular intervals during the day, I'm in my bedroom, and I had the thought come to my mind, oh, I should do the discernment technique, question where I am. Okay, there's a bedroom, bedspread, and dresser, and there's whatever, the clothes, and there's this, and there's that, and there's the window, and there's the Golden Palace across the street. What? Golden Palace across the street? That was a discernment technique for me, and that triggered me to say, hey, guess what? You're no longer in the astral. I had an experience once. I was in a dream, and somebody came to me in a dream, somebody that I know in the physical, who's a sort of a teacher, and they said, what are you doing? And I said, what are you doing? And they said, how do you know that you're not dreaming right now? And I said, well, I'm not, because I see everything around me. And they said, did you look up? And I said, what? They said, did you look up? Many times when the ego constructs reality, we're never really aware of the ceilings where we're at. We usually see what's in front of us, not what's behind us. So when the ego's projecting reality, many times this sounds funny to say, many times it forgets the ceiling, because the ceiling is usually inconsequential. So oftentimes something simple is looking up and going, what the hell is that? Because it's not filled in. It's like a part of the picture that hasn't been drawn for us, so we're able to experience some sort of an anomaly. And this was a technique that was shown to me in a dream that at that moment in time when I looked up, it boom, I was lucid dreaming and realized I wasn't in the physical anymore. That's a discernment technique. It's looking around the room and going, bookcase, chairs, people, pink elephant, what? And zeroing in on the one anomaly, because it's always, think of all the weird stuff we dream about. Don't you wish you'd go, man, why didn't I question what was going on? That was so bizarre. We're developing the habit of questioning what's going on. So when we get to the bizarre part of the dream, our brain goes, wait a minute, we shouldn't be floating upside down. And you question these things, and it triggers that awareness. So it's simply look around and study your surroundings in detail. Look for anything out of the ordinary. Look at the sky. Is it the right color? Okay? Look at the people. Who are they? Do you actually know them? You're in a room full of people. I remember a particular dream, and I was having it, and I stopped to do this, and I suddenly realized I didn't know who any of these people actually were. They weren't friends. They weren't co-workers. I didn't know. I was like, I'm in a room full of people who I don't know. And where the hell am I anyways? And what is going on? And boom, there's that switch that flips, and it's suddenly, oh, I'm out of my physical body. This is a dream. This isn't physical. And then that triggers the lucid dream state. Simply ask if you're in the physical or astral. Question it. Where are you right now? Remember, you don't really know until you question. Think of that guy that was going to answer the front door at night, or me going to get a glass of water. It wasn't until I encountered something out of the ordinary that I realized I wasn't in the physical. It was my house, my hallway, my fridge, all that was the same. It wasn't until I saw the sky outside that it didn't look right, and that made me question where I was, and that's when I realized that there was something going on, that I was no longer in the physical. There's also little physical tests that we can do as well. This is the famous one, pulling your finger, attempting to stretch it. Your physical finger doesn't stretch when I pull on it. Okay, so if you just do this discreetly during the day, you question where you are. Part of the discernment, where am I? What is this place? What am I doing? Is it the astral or physical? You can just discreetly see what happens. Okay, it's something that you do on a regular interval that you can test where you are. This is a physical body, it's flesh and bone. It won't stretch. Your astral body just becomes whatever you want it to be. So you can pull that finger and make it like a mile long if you want to. Okay, so when you do this and suddenly you realize your finger's going all creepy and weird, the first time it happens, it's like, it's almost frightening, but that tells you you're in a different state. Okay, it's just testing the different laws. I got this watch for my birthday, and at regular points during the interval, I never had a watch before. So regularly during the day, I found myself checking the time by flipping down this watch. I was in a dream once, and I checked the time. And I looked at it and went, there's no time in the astral, so the watch is just like, it wasn't even making any sense. It was like, what the hell is that? Like almost like Chinese or something written on it. I was like, what the hell is going on with my watch? Wait a second, I know what this means. And it was just another little trick that I did that was even not intentional that triggered all this. Time is weird. Looking at, if you see a clock, always look back and see if it's the same time. Because in the astral, a clock is irrelevant. It's just something you project. It doesn't actually work. There is no time there. It's just a projection. So if you see the clock and it says 8:45, and it says 1:30, and it says 2:20, you now know you're not looking at a real clock, you're looking at something in the astral. Another trick I've heard of that I actually haven't used, you can carry a piece of paper in your pocket with something written on it, a word that's important to you, and just regularly punch during the day, just read that word, so see if it's still there. In the astral, that word won't be there because it's not a physical piece of paper. It's just your projection of it, and it'll become whatever random thought is on your mind at that time. Something that tells you that you're no longer in the physical. You can attempt to jump and float. This one is good because you can do it discreetly. You can't do this one too often at work. People think you're weird. I mean literally jump. See if you come down. Jump up and see if you come down. Okay, if you come down, you're obviously in the physical. If you don't come down, or the concept of jumping and floating don't mean anything because there's no gravity, then you know you're in the astral. Yes?
This is a recurring dream for me.
Jumping and
Jumping
floating?
up and floating.
Mm-hmm.
This has happened on countless occasions. I've had this dream.
You've probably done this before. Probably learned some of these techniques before. Just need to focus on what does that mean. You literally tell yourself, when I jump and don't come back down, I'm not in the physical. I'm lucid dreaming, I'm lucid dreaming, I'm lucid dreaming. You have to program that in your mind, so next time you do that, it triggers that.
Would that be for me the, what you call it?
It may very well be. If you dream about it all the time, that may very well be your initiator element. At some point in the dream, you're going to find yourself jumping and floating. Now you just have to make a conscious association of jumping and floating with being in the astral and not being in the physical.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
I've dreamt of flying in the skies, but I don't know that it's a dream.
Yeah, oftentimes that's just you in your astral body and enjoying the laws of the astral and floating around. If you do that regularly, and if you could associate flying with the astral state, that could be a trigger for you as well. You can also do simple things like fall asleep while repeating self-suggestive phrases, such as, anything like this, make up your own. I will recognize I'm dreaming. I will wake up within my dream. Just fall asleep saying that is almost like a mental mantra over and over again, just imprinting that into your subconscious. So when you're dreaming, you say to yourself, I will recognize I'm dreaming. I will wake up, which actually helps you do that. You can also use the power of visualization to imagine yourself in another place. So let's say you've got a favorite place you'd like to go. I don't know, maybe it's a summer cottage, maybe it's a famous or a vacation retreat, maybe something from your childhood, your grandma's house, whatever. Fall asleep thinking of that place. Not just, thinking of, I mean like recreate that place in your mind. Put yourself there. See yourself walking around and interacting with the environment, reaching out, touching things, feeling things, hearing the sounds, the smells, whatever. You want to use all your intellect to recreate that image. The neat thing that happens with this is once you're able to do that, you will fall asleep with that imprinted on your, because that's what you're focusing on, right? You're concentrating on that. When you fall asleep, you're in the astral. Guess what becomes the reality that you see? Whatever you're thinking about. So if you're thinking about your favorite vacation spot, you're down by the beach, you can feel the sand beneath your feet, the wind, you can hear the sounds of the beach, and you hear the waves crashing. If you can think of that and hold that thought as you fall asleep, once you cross the transition between awake and sleep, you're now in the astral thinking about your vacation spot, so guess what you see before you? So your vision melds into your reality, which is a really, really interesting experience. And then you suddenly realize, like, I'm here. This means I'm dreaming. This means I'm dreaming. This means it worked. And that's the whole part of the process. You've got to use a little bit of effort with this. It's not just, passively thinking about that place. I mean, recreate that image as if you were there. Try to see it in your mind's eye and put yourself in there. If it's a beach scene, move your feet and feel the sand beneath your feet. Reach out and touch the rock and feel the warmth of the rock. Feel the heat of the sun and feel the wind, and hear the sounds. You want to basically engross yourself in that visualization. And it's usually fairly simple to do because it requires a certain amount of intellectual effort, which means less random ego interrupting thoughts. If you do that right before you fall asleep, you may very well wake up there. And that's become the sign that I'm here, that means I'm sleeping, and you're in the astral, you're lucid dreaming. To help remember your dreams, upon waking, you can do a retrospective exercise in bed. Now, this is for people that only remember a couple of fragments, only remember bits and pieces. Because sometimes you can do all this stuff. You can think, I was lucid dreaming. I remember being lucid, and then what happened? And it's not unusual to be lucid for a few minutes and then lose that state as well. The longer you're lucid, the more the ego is going to take control. So it's not unusual for your lucid dream to be a few minutes and then you slip back into a regular fantasy. It's not unusual to be I'm here at the beach. I'm a lucid dreaming. I realize this isn't the astral, this is the physical. Oh, here comes a purple elephant. Oh, I'm going to start dancing with it and I'm dreaming again. Okay? It's very easy to fall back into that state. It happens all the time. Or switch between lucid and dreaming and lucid and dreaming and lucid and dreaming, just like during a regular meditation. It's often, as well, all kinds of strange things can happen. We'll talk about later on. Things like you lucid dream but you can't see. You're not able to perceive what's around you. All kinds of other things like that. Sometimes you can remember lucid dreaming and then everything goes blank. I had that happen a lot. I'd be lucid dreaming, I'd project myself to a specific place with a specific purpose. We'll talk a bit more about that stuff later on. And I wouldn't be able to remember it. Everything would be blank. Like it would immediately blank. It was almost like out of my control. Something was intentionally trying to stop me from remembering what was going on. To help remember stuff, you can do a retrospective exercise. The first thing you want to do if you want to remember your dreams is you've got to keep still. Okay? You can't get up, go downstairs, go to the bathroom, make a coffee, sit down and try to remember your dreams. The reason why dreams are so easy to remember upon waking and why they so rapidly disappear is as soon as you wake up, there's not a concrete melding of the physical and the astral. Okay, you're kind of 1 foot in the physical, 1 foot in the astral. You've almost got that napping on the couch sort of thing. That's why you often remember a lot of dreams in between hitting the snooze button on the alarm. Okay, because you've got 1 foot in the astral, 1 foot in the physical. You want to keep that connection there so the memories, you can actually take the memories from your astral body and bring them into your physical. If you go downstairs, have a shower, get a cup of coffee, you've completely severed that connection and now you're fully grounded in your physical body. You're going to have trouble accessing those memories. But while you're laying there in bed, before you really move, before you do anything, that's when you want to try to remember your dreams. Try to bring as much detail to memory as you can and then get up and write them down. When you're having trouble remembering your dreams, rather than trying to remember the whole dream, just focus on the last thing that you remember and slowly try to work backwards. So I have a dream, I wake up and I'm like, I'm dreaming about a suitcase. Dreaming about a suitcase. What was I doing in the suitcase? I was holding the suitcase. I was holding the suitcase. I was standing on the corner somewhere. Okay, standing on the corner, waiting for a bus. So I'm holding the suitcase, standing on the corner, waiting for a bus. Because I was going to a job interview. Like you're remembering bits and pieces rather than going, I don't know, can't remember anything. Focus on a detail, a piece that you can, and then start asking little questions about that piece to bring your memory a little bit further. And then a little bit further, and next thing you know, you're reconstructing the whole dream in reverse. Instead of trying to remember the entire dream, you focus on one piece, which unlocks another piece, which unlocks another piece. It's almost like a chain reaction until you can remember the entire dream. There's a mantra. I'll give you a mantra. See, it was this class. And the mantra is Raum Gao. You can just say that over and over again in your mind, and it's one of the things that helps recreate that connection between the astral and the physical to bring some of those memories back across. You don't have to say it out loud, which is important if you're sleeping beside somebody that might object to you doing this when you randomly woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning or something. Another thing I will tell you, you ever woke up in the middle of the night for no reason? I notice sometimes you keep waking up at the same time in the middle of the night. Many times you're actually waking up in the astral. Okay, we can often get woken up in the middle of the night as a way to tell us we're in the astral, but we just fall back. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you know what you do? That's where you are. Because you're usually surprised to see. I went through this phase of waking up at 3:30. I did that for like 6 nights in a row. I was like, what is the deal with 3:30? And then I got all crazy numerology, kind of figure out if there was a message there. And then it just dawned on me one day, was I awake or was I projecting? Because I fell right back to sleep. So the next time I woke up at 3:30, I just went and discovered, that's why I keep waking up. It's in the astral. It's a plant to get me to recognize that I'm lucid dreaming. Because I had someone that I needed to talk to up there. It's a different story we did. But this is a mantra. We would say this just over and over again in our mind. So we're laying in bed. We're like, can I remember? I can't remember anything. I can't remember anything. Oh, and you just start this mantra. And it's weird because you start doing this, and after a little short period of time, stuff starts flooding You just start remembering different aspects of your dreams. This is a really interesting one to work with if you're having trouble remembering, or you're only remembering bits and pieces and you're trying to put the whole dream together. That's a really good mantra for that.
Can you pronounce that again?
This will be Ra Om Ga Om. We haven't really done too many mantras yet. We'll get into some more later on. But you can just basically say it in your mind like Ra Om Ga Om, just over and over again in your mind. It's like a mantra, like almost like a chant. Instead of saying like Ra Om Ga Om, right? You got to like mantralize it, right? Get that energy going. Okay, extending. Basically, you're extending the vowels. So, we've talked about the vowel sounds. I'm a little screwed up the paper, so. And don't forget too, all this stuff's online, right? So, and we put it online for a couple of reasons. So you've got reference to it. We put it online for things like this that you might want to use as techniques later on. We also put that stuff online, so if you end up missing a couple classes for whatever reason, you just read the stuff and then come back at any point.
How do you access it?
You'll give me your email address, and I'll send you some stuff. Yeah, I can send you a username and password, and then we have
Can you use the email that's on that sheet? It's got all the list of things on.
Yep. Yeah, or you can write it down for me tonight, and I can send you the stuff tomorrow. Understanding and then eliminating dreams allows us to reach a state of illumination, because dreams are unconscious. Basically, we could live a double life. We could be here during the physical, and we can be there in the astral as well. Remember that you could be learning and developing spiritually in a place that has no time attached to it. There's a tremendous amount of work that we can do in the higher dimensions. We're also closer to the light, the source of all things, and there are many things there that can help us. You've probably heard the expression, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. That's usually an astral teacher. It's very rarely a physical teacher. Okay, the people that can really help us develop on that path, we're going to encounter as intelligences in the astral. Remember, the intelligences in the astral, they were the angels of religions. They were the gods and goddesses of the world's religions. Okay, there are intelligences in there that will communicate with us, that will help us, talk to us, show us things, teach us things. And we just have to get there in order to see them.
I'm sorry, what is that eliminating dreams? I'm not following that.
Understanding and then eliminating dreams allows us to reach a state of illumination. The dreams that we have are subconscious. That's just the ego. The dreams are just the random actions of the ego. We want to be in a permanent state of lucid dreaming, a permanent state of awareness in our dreams, because then that gives us a continuous consciousness in the astral that we can sustain after we pass on. Okay? We want to work towards eliminating dreams, because a dream, in the context that I'm using this, a dream is simply a want, a desire, a memory, a fantasy of the ego that carries on during the night. Just like we want to awaken consciousness during the waking state, we want to awaken consciousness during the sleep state as well. They're equally as important, think of it that way. By working with lucid dreaming and astral projection, that's how we can work towards eliminating dreams. So we can start acting consciously in the astral. So we can meet our teacher and receive guidance on all kinds of stuff. Yes?
I remember this one time I was in a bus stop here, and it was really, really cold in the middle of winter, like midnight, last bus. And it was freezing, I was shivering, and I started to picture myself on the beach in Brazil.
Yeah?
And I felt the sand, and I felt the sun, and I
Yeah.
heard the ocean and everything. When I came back, and I realized my skin was warm, and I wasn't shivering. Would that be like dreaming? But then you said that you can't dream unless you're detached from your body.
It could be. It could very well be like a type of, you may have, I shouldn't have said that you can't be detached from your physical body, because if you have a lot of practice, that's a state you can develop. That might have been something that you're carrying over from a past life, the ability to do things like that.
To the point where my skin got warm, and I wasn't cold anymore.
It's all that stuff's easy to control. Yeah. Think of yogis that can go days without, or years or whatever, in various physical positions, and people that can walk on fire, and people that can go without eating. You'd be surprised what you can do with your physical body with the right states of consciousness. Yeah. Yes.
So the actions that we take right here
Yep.
are directed by two possibilities, higher states, either egos, which exist in higher dimensions that are affecting us now, or our higher consciousness.
Yes.
For us to have taken the action to come to this course, as an example, it is an indication that we're being guided by our higher consciousness as opposed to our ego. correct?
Yeah, just an interest in spiritual things in general is usually the push from consciousness. Don't forget, according to the law of return and recurrence, you're not learning this right now, you're just remembering. Because you've known all this before. That's a really neat part of some of this esoteric stuff. Once you start having experiences, it is all overwhelmingly familiar. The sense of astral projection, the sense of lucid dreaming, the sense of communicating with some of the intelligences. It's like, you know, it's something you've experienced before. Not so much learning as it was remembering all the stuff that you've forgotten, because we crossed that void to come back to the physical plane again.
And the way to conquer, ultimately, the way to conquer the ego is simply by following your bliss.
Yes and no. It's following the bliss, but at the same time, you have to eliminate the ego, right? And that works with being able to identify it and then study it and then eliminate it. That's the thing. If the ego's not eliminated, it's always going to keep coming back. So we have to remove it. We have to free the consciousness. We have to break those chains, and that's a conscious effort to do that. It's not just by simply, lucid dreaming that's going to happen automatically. I'm going to talk more about that later on. We're going here. Awakening is slow, gradual, and natural. It's not spectacular and sensational. You plant an acorn in the ground, you come back the next day, there is not a 100-foot tall oak tree there. Okay? There's nothing for a couple weeks, and then you see a little sprout, and that doesn't really do anything exciting for a couple more weeks. These things are slow and gradual. You will have a lucid dream, and it'll last a couple minutes, and then you can't remember it. And you'll be like, I can't remember what happened after that, or I don't know if I was lucid dreaming or not, and how do I can't really tell, I'm not really sure. Over time, these things develop. You've got to learn some of this stuff. It's just like learning an instrument. It's just like piano lessons. You're going to be able to play a little thing at first, and you might forget how it goes, and you might remember something later on. That's the way it works. It's not spectacular and sensational. Okay, lucid dreaming isn't going home tonight, being fully aware of what you're doing, meeting a teacher up there, and discovering the mysteries of life and death in an evening. Okay, you're going to have to learn how to use. It sounds funny. You're going to have to learn how to use your astral body. Moving around is awkward and weird. One of my first experiences of trying to walk through a wall was getting stuck halfway through, panicking, waking up in a sweat in my bedroom because I was stuck in a wall. Okay, those are the things that you have to learn how to move. You have to learn to do all this kind of stuff, and it takes time. And the entire time you're trying to do that, there's the ego that's continually trying to take control of the car. Most of your early lucid dream experiences don't last very long, and they're frustrating because no sooner you're awakened to consciousness and trying to do something, then the regular dream takes over, and now you're just floating and flying or doing something that's not really too exciting. Just like a mighty tree going from a tiny seed, it's a slow, gradual process. And it doesn't have to be that slow. I mean, it can be weeks, it can be days, it can be months, whatever. Everybody's different. It also depends on how much you've been working on this in a past life and how many latent abilities you've carried through into this life as well. That can make a huge difference. In the beginning, experiences are sporadic and discontinuous, but over time they develop. You might get all excited because you'll have a lucid dream one day, and then you'll have one the next day, and you think, here I am on the path, and then you'll have nothing for 3 months. And you think, what happened? Am I doing something wrong? Am I failing? No, this is the way it is. It's just the way it is. Over time, you will see the changes. Over time, you will take control. Everything becomes clearer. The other thing, too, it's almost like focusing your eyes to a bright light. At first, everything's kind of blurry and out of focus, but over time, everything comes into focus. The astral and lucid dreams are like that as well. At first, everything's fuzzy and hard to perceive, and you're not really sure what's going on, and everything, your memories and your experiences are almost like covered in like a cloudy haze, and you're not really sure what was going on, but over time, they become more vivid. It's just a practice thing. Okay, well, let's take a 5-minute break.